Okay, so I'm going to introduce the central limit theorem in this video, but we're not gonna really go too much in depth with it, but I'm just gonna introduce what exactly it is, right? So if you remember, we've talked about this millions of times, right? I have a population, right, which I don't know. It could be San Diego, for example, people who exercise in San Diego, right? And it's impossible for us to grab every single person in the population, right? If we do, it's called the census, right? So a census means like I got everyone. I can't possibly get everyone, so I'm gonna take a small sample to see to get a taste of what the population is going to be, right? So we talked about sampling methods, right? How we can sample and how we can't sample, right? So we're gonna talk about some other things, right? So population itself has something called parameters, right? So these parameters are basically what describe the population. And usually these are mu, these are sigma, and then you later see that it's p, right? So these are Greek letters, mu. This is what we call the population mean. This is the population standard deviation. This is the population proportion, right? So I'm just going to write population mean, population standard deviation. This is population proportion, right? So this is what those are. I don't know if you can see that, but that's basically what it is, right? Population mean, population standard deviation, population proportion, right? And since we know that we can't grab everyone in the population, these are unknown to us. We don't know what the heck those are, right? So everything that we were doing with normal distribution and given these two values, well, sometimes we don't know what they are, right? So what we have to do is take a sample and try to estimate them, right? So those are what we call statistics. So statistics are my estimators that we use to estimate all of these values that we don't know, right? So the statistics are a characteristic of the sample. The way I remember it is that S goes with S, right? And P goes with P, right? So statistics, an estimator for the mean, the population mean, is a sample mean, X bar, right? A estimator for the population standard deviation is S, little s, right? Here, an estimator for the population proportion, and what we're going to really talk about is P hat, right? So it's P with a hat on top. So we say P and then hat. Okay. So that's what statistics are. Statistics are just estimators. So they're estimators and they are used to estimate these values that we don't know because we can't get the census, right? So we take a small sample to try to estimate what these are, right? Now, every sample is going to be very different, okay? So if I want to figure out what the mean population mean of the population is, right? I can grab a small sample, get a mean, right? But then if my friend gets another sample and gets a mean, we're going to have two different means, right? So there is some sort of variability and randomness with it that's going on in the statistics, right? So let's consider this question. So consider a sample of 100 people. 77 earn more than $15 an hour. What proportion make more than $15 an hour? Is it relative to the population? Okay, so that means I got a sample, right? I got a sample and I got 100 people. I don't know where I got them from, but I got 100 people. Okay, I got 77 of them to earn more than $15 an hour. So what proportion make more than $15 an hour? Well, this is a sample, right? We don't know what the population is. This is not a mean. This is not a standard deviation. This is a proportion, the proportion of people, right, that make more than $15 an hour. Now, is it P or is it P hat? Well, in this case, it will be P hat because it comes from a sample, right? So P hat, how do we find the proportion of people? Well, there's 77 out of the 100, right? So this is just equal to 0.77 or 77%. So basically 77% of this sample makes more than $15 an hour. Is this relative to the population? Does the entire population, well, whatever population is, maybe San Diego, right? Does this mean that 77% of the population in San Diego make more than $15 an hour? Well, I don't know. It really depends on where we sampled, right? But, based on most of you guys that are community college students, right? some of you guys, I can bet that you guys don't make more than $15 an hour, right? So this, can result, maybe might be a biased representation, right? So it may be biased. Maybe this is, we don't know where we got this data from, right? Is it possible for me to get 77%? Yeah, but it really depends on where we really got it, right? Where we really got this data. Okay, so we know that there might be some bias. There probably was not a simple random sample, an SRS, simple random sample. Probably wasn't that, right? But it's probably not as accurate, right? So what we want to figure out is like, okay, let's say I got another sample of 100 people. I tried my best to do an SRS, right? And I got something else, right? Well, it's going to be definitely very different than 77%, right? So this means that our p hat, regardless if this was biased or not, our p hat will be different every sample, which makes sense, right? Every sample I'm going to have a different p hat. Okay, so now that I know that p hat is going to be different in every sample, this now tells me that this is going to be random, right? My p hat is going to be a random variable because every single trial or sample that I pick up, this p hat is not going to be very different. So when we're talking about random things, and since we're in distributions, we might ask ourselves is, what is the distribution of p hat? What exactly does p hat look like? Okay, that's what we want to go ahead and figure out, right? So let's say, for example, we had two different types of people, right? We had either cat people and we also had dog people. Okay, so what I want to go ahead and do is, like, I want to go ahead and say, okay, well, how many people are cat people and how many people are dog people? So if I get maybe, I don't know, 5 people, I got 5 people and I asked them, are you cat people or dog people? Maybe 2 of them were cat people and then the rest of them were dog people, right? So how many people were cat people? Well, in this case, it was 2 out of the 5. Okay, good. Does this mean that in general, 2 out of 5 is going to be cat people? Not really, right? What we want to do is like, okay, well, let me get another 5 people, right? Am I going to get the same answers? No, I might get this time maybe all of them are cat people. So what's the probability, or what's the chance that I get that? Well, that's just 5 out of 5, right? I got all of the cat people, right? So then I get another 5 people. Get another one. Maybe this one, there was only 3 that were cat people, right? So in this case, it would be 3 out of 5, right? And I can continue doing this, right? I continue getting more 5 other people, and I'm going to have different probabilities, right? So what I want to know is, like, if I were to plot these proportions, right, on a graph, right, from 0 to 1, because you will have like 0.1, 0.2, continues on. If I were to graph that, what is this going to look like? What is the distribution? So what does p hat look like? What do you look like? What do you look like? That's what I want to figure out. What exactly is that? Because then that will make us do a whole bunch of really crazy things also, right? We can solve problems of what is the probability that this can occur, right? So this will bring in a lot of really good questions, right? Especially when we get into inference. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there because that's where I'm going to end it off, because on Monday or Tuesday, whichever class you are, we are going to go ahead and do an activity on this, right? But I wanted to go ahead and introduce what all these values are, what all these variables are. And also something that you want to know is that this distribution is of p hat is what we're going to call the sampling distribution, because it comes from the sample. Okay, so that's what I want to know. What do you look like if I get a whole bunch of 5 people, right, and I ask them if they're cat people? What is going to be the proportion of people that are cat people in general if I were to graph all of these values? And I did this many different times. Okay, all right, so I'll stop right there.